Okay.
Well, yeah. As I mentioned when I sent the image which I took on, I think it's early in February, that this was the first time I was trying to do some prime work on my telescope in terms of photography. And the main objective was to get focus. Now, my setup consists of, first of all, a focal reducer flattener, 6.3, which is made for meads, which I got eventually. And then a variable spacer, which I've got in between, which I can adjust, which is actually quite nice. It's called a Verilog. And then my piece is a Verilog. I'll show you later on, when I can just put my camera on and I'll show you what it looks like. Very handy because you can adjust now, and it's marked off in millimeters. And it's from 29 millimeters to 47, you can adjust it. And then you can lock, if you've got your exact position, you can lock that so that it doesn't move. Okay, and then also at the end of that is my T-piece to connect onto my camera.
Deon, can I just ask, you said you've got a focal reducer 6.3. What does the 6.3 mean?
It widens your field of view. It reduces your focus point forward. So you get a larger image. And they make it in 6.3, and I think there's another one which is a bit smaller, 3 point something. But this is 6.3 is the normal type of focal reducer on the market that most of the people use.
Does that imply 63% of the full frame image?
Yeah, well, close to that. It's not exactly 6.3.
Okay. Sorry for that.
Yeah, the important thing is to get your, what they call the back focus correct. That is the distance between your focal reducer and your camera sensor. And for each focal reducer, it's a different figure. Now for the meads, it's 105 millimeters. So you've got to adjust that exactly. This is why I got the variable space adjuster in between, which allows me to do that exactly up to 105. So that was the first thing I had to get right. And so I thought, what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm not going to do any connection to my computer or nebulosity capturing. I'm just going to try and get a proper focus because that is one of the difficult things in prime focus. So I made my setup, and luckily the moon was available. I waited for that quite a while. It came up at about, I think it was 9 o'clock that evening. But I used that to get the first focus point. So I had to adjust the focus wheel quite a lot until I thought initially that something was wrong. I can't get any focus. And then I got the focus. I used my viewfinder because the moon was big and bright. And then I got the focus on the moon, which was quite good. And so I thought, now I go to a star because I've got focus. Let me just see how I do this with my Bartinov mask. And then I realized, oh, I'm not on my computer. I won't see that properly. So I decided to do that the next time when I connect up my computer. I took a few images of the moon, and I also took 30 seconds, one 30-second image and a 125 and a 120-second image, single shot with the camera. And that's the one image I sent to everybody, which was a 30-second one, without any processing. I noticed, Derek, you sent me one which you processed in light room, which looked quite nice. In any case, I was quite surprised when I saw the image for 30 seconds. And then I thought, all right, I can now go to the next step.
Deon, was ISO 1600?
Yes, that was ISO 1600. And it was 30 seconds. The moon, I did on 1/25 seconds and ISO 200. So, right, so I went the next step and I took my laptop and I connected it on, and then I decided what I'll do is now obviously the moon wasn't there anymore because I can't take photos of the moon. Now I've got to focus on a star. And I used a Bartinov mask with nebulosity, and I went to frame and focus. And I used Sirius because I wasn't sure what I'm going to see in the stars. And that was a bit bright. Next time I'll use a more dimmer star, which I think will allow me to see the Bartinov mask more effectively. But I got the focus, which I wasn't quite happy with. But I was running out of time because obviously Orion was moving towards the west and closer to the yellowish atmosphere, and I wanted to avoid that. So when I thought I got an okay focus, I took a preview and it looked all right. And then, as I said, I was running out of time. I wanted to take 50 images of 30 seconds. And then I realized I won't be able to do that. So I reverted to 15 seconds and I took 50 lights. And then again, I did some darks. I took 13 darks. And that's what I processed. Now, I'm not still happy with my focusing. That I'm going to practice now for a couple of times without really taking photographs. I just want to get a grip of focusing because that's very essential to get that right. Okay, so what you see now on your screen is the pre-processed image, which I did in nebulosity with all the lights and the darks. Now at the end, I had to discard, I had 50 years, I had to discard 11 of those because in my processing or actually capturing outside, I did bump against some the tripod, and also I had the movement there. So I had to discard that 9 images or 11 images. So I ended up with 40. That's what I processed, and that's what you see here as a TIFF image. I converted it from FITS to TIFF, and I copied it into Photoshop. Okay, now the first step will be this one. If you look on the right, on the layers, you can see there was first was a stretch. I'm going to take these down. You can see as I go through the various steps here. That was the original image. That was the stretch image, which I use. I've got a loaded curve, pardon, a loaded curve with 3 set points, which I can just load every time when I do this first big stretch to get from the linear to a normal photograph image. That was the stretch on the curve. And then I made a copy of that, and I changed the levels a bit just to get that right. Now, what happened here, I'm not quite sure. You can see there's some frame that appeared here. I don't know how that happened. I still have to go and try and find a solution for that. I don't know what that was. So then yes, that was the stage copy. And then I did the levels, which was this. And that basically, you use a gray. Let me just see whether this was in layers. No, that was not. No. No, I don't want that. Let me just leave that as such. I went into levels and just set the background. And then I also set the black point, which was this one. Now, you can see on the edges here, specifically over there, and on this side here and down at the bottom, there's some gradient appearing on the image, which I had to get rid of. And my background was set at 30, which I normally do, between 30 and 38. So this was the first step I took, and then I saved that. And then I moved over to, I'll take that, you can see that was the image, which I had previously. And then I used the Gradient Exterminator, which is a software program which you can plug in, which removes the gradient on the image. And I ran that once, and that was the result. You can see there's quite a bit of noise, which one would expect of 15 seconds on this bright image. The 30 seconds would have made a difference, but I had to get rid of the noise later on. So that's what the Gradient Exterminator did. And now you can see the nebulosity is coming out quite nicely. Then the next step.
Incredible difference.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Now, this process, which I follow, I'll go all the way down here. You can just close all these. You can see as first of all, I did a topaz denoising. Derek, I think you're okay with topaz. You've used it.
Okay, boy.
I've used it with a lot of my property photographs, and it makes an incredible difference.
Yeah. That is the image which I had previously, and then I made a denoise on that. Now, if we do this, just get an idea of what the denoise will do. Oops, that's a bit too much. That's on, that's off, and that's on. You see the subtle difference. That's with the noise, that's without the noise. Again, with the noise, you can see in this area here, if you focus there with your eye, that's with the Topaz program plugin. Okay, let me get back to normal size. Where am I now? No, there we are. Now, what I did was trying to get out the faint nebulosity, I go to curves, and then I do small steps. I think I explained that last time. And you do that several times. And this was the first one. You can see that's without it. And that's the first step. You see the nebulosity is coming out. Then I did another one. And another one. And another one. And that was the final one. So that brought out quite a bit of the nebulosity in this image, which I was okay with. And I saved that, and then I went to the next step. Now, as I said, I've got to establish what caused this. I'm not quite sure. I cropped that out at the end. Now, what happened here was, I'll go down to the last image we had. Now, this is what it looks like after I did all the curves. Then I decided I've still got, you can see another gradient here at the end here. And I thought, okay, my color doesn't look nice. I do another gradient exterminator. And then that fixed quite a bit of the gradients at the corners. And it aligned the colors, the red, green, and blue. It wasn't aligned after the curve adjustments. Then I had to reset my black points and white points. And that's what I got after I reset my background, black point, and also then I did the white point as well to bring out the brightness in the nebula. Then I did another denoise to get rid of some noise as well that was left over. And then I did the levels adjustment in the various colors. That was in the blue, the green, and the red, so that I can make sure that the color and white points and black points are aligned. And there's quite a difference in that and that. Right, then I went and made a curve adjustment. Now, the difference here is that I made an S-curve, small S-curve in the curve adjustment, which then brought out the brighter parts in the center of the nebula. And then you can see at the top here, there's a greenish tint, and you see some greenish tint in some of the nebula here as well. And I took that out with Hasta La Vista Green, which is another plugin, which I got way back, and it works quite fine. We'll see the difference now. You look at the top here. It took the green out and it neutralized that. So now I've got a better picture in terms of the red, green, and the blue. Still, you can see it's too much noise yet, but that I can't improve on because I've got not enough photons in my images. Right, then the next step was I use Astronomy Tools to do the next. The first one was local contrast enhancement. These are the Astronomy Tools, which you can get as a plugin. I think you've got that, Derek, I'm not sure. But
I use that all the time in Photoshop.
Yeah, and it's just one of these which you, local contrast enhancement, there it is. You just run that and it's automatic algorithms, it runs through and it does its job. And that was the result. You can see that's without it, that's with it. Without it, with it. It brightens up the nebula. Then I did deep space, enhanced deep DSO and reduce the stars. That was the next step also in Astronomy Tools. You can see the difference. That's before, that's after.
It's quite a big difference.
Yeah. Then I made again a small, every time you got to go and check your curves and your levels to make sure, because that alters as you do the various processing, that you keep your background at the correct level. And I made a small curve adjustments in curves. Again, the small S curve, you'll see it improved. Whoops, I'm still here with my, where are we? It was accidentally. Get rid of that. That's the difference. That was before. I wanted to increase this part of the nebula, and that's what the result was. Then the next was also Astronomy Tools, which was less crunchy, more fuzzy. And that's what the difference is. That's before, and that's after. And then normally I do a screen mask invert, but I didn't do it on this one because the screen mask invert brings out the very faint nebulosity. And obviously I've got not enough photons to bring out the faint nebulosity. It will just increase the noise. So I didn't do that. I just used a high pass filter, which is a Tony Ellis procedure. And that made the difference very, very slightly. That's with it after the high pass filter, and that's before the high pass filter. It just
definitely brings out a lot more detail in the dark lanes.
Yes, correct. Normally what you do is you run the screen mask invert, which brings up the faint nebulosity, and then you do the high pass filter, which will correct your background, which it did now, as you could see. And then the last thing, where are we? Okay, that was the, okay, then I just cropped this image to get rid of this outside frame here. Because I mean, that's just nonsense. I don't know how I got that. And then that was the final image which I got. Now, obviously, if I had used 30 seconds, this nebula would not look so grainy as it looks now at present. It would look much more smoother, like on the inside here. So as the first step, I'm quite okay. I'm not happy with the result. I obviously want to get something better. You can see my focusing wasn't too bad. There's a bit of a bunnies over there, but otherwise my focus was okay, but I'm not happy with that either. So that's the final image.
It looks brilliant, Deon. I wish I could get it that good.
It's probably one of the most detailed dark lines that I've seen. It is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, obviously there's lots of nebulosity around here and also around this area here, which I obviously didn't capture all around here. If you normally look at the M42, you notice it's like a flare. But next time I'll try and improve, obviously, on this. But I think for the first shot, for me in prime focus, I'm quite okay with this result.
That's
Yeah,
very,
this is
very
actually
modest, Deon.
I did try it, first of all, a different approach when I processed the images a bit in nebulosity, which I normally don't do. I just wanted to see what it looks like, but I don't like nebulosity the way they process. I rather do it in Photoshop.
Deon, have you tried that affinity program at all?
I had a look at it, Derek. I haven't tried it. It looks quite successful, the images I've seen. No, I haven't tried it. Maybe I'll do that sometime. It looks to be what they added on now in terms of the astrophotography. Looks to be quite good. I know Pete Scully did use that on his last image.
Yeah, I began to look at it and I was so impressed. I downloaded and paid for it, so I've got it. And then I've been looking at, it's got a total of 112 tutorials, varying from 2 minutes to 18 minutes. But the astrophotography ones are the longer ones. And there's about 8 or 10 astrophotography tutorials. And maybe we can look at 1 or 2 of those sometime, or even tonight if there's time, if anybody wants to.
Yeah, okay, no, that's good. I think it's new, more and more new software is coming onto the market. There's one called Star Tools as well. Obviously, the astrophotographers and mathematicians are working now to try and get new software on the market. And each one of them seems to have improvements on the previous software of other people. Images Plus was the first one that was the real astrophotography software, specifically for astrophotography. And it was used for many years and still being used. But as you've noticed, the developers stopped doing development on that because there are other software now on the market that improves on Images Plus. But Images Plus is still a very good software. I haven't used it, but it's now for free. And I think Pete did mention that he will discuss Images Plus when he gets an opportunity with us, for those who are interested.
Deon, quick question.
Yes, Peter.
Sorry if I missed something at the beginning, but is this image based on that single image, single shot that you sent us, or is this multiple?
No, this is multiple. Okay. This was 39 images, lights of 15 seconds each. That's close to about 10 minutes worth of information. Now, the problem of the M42, yeah. The problem with the M42 you've got this very bright part here. Now, as soon as you increase your exposure time, it burns this out. And you get all the nice nebulosity. But this area here becomes white, bright. So what one should do is you should take long exposures, your necessary number of lights, and then you also take a number of lights at only 10 or 15 seconds, where you haven't got this area so blown out. And then you combine them in Photoshop. And then you get a very nice image, which will balance out the nebulosity on the outside, which you got with your longer exposures. And you get the inner part more, you can see the trapezium, you will see the trapezium in those images very nicely. I've seen people do that, and it makes a big difference. Otherwise, as soon as you try and increase your exposure time, this whole area here becomes blown out.
Very seldom you see an image of M42 where the trapezium is apparent. You could just see it on yours there, but it's more of a blob than for stars.
Yeah. In order to do that, Peter, you've got to combine long exposures with shorter exposures of the same object. Then you can do that with masking. You take that out and you bring the lesser exposure and you put that in there. And then you get a very nice image.
In the Affinity tutorials, there's the one tutorial they use a M42 as an example of a DSLR image, and they use a 10-second stacked images for the core and 240-second for the rest, and they combine those in Affinity. And I think that's about a 15-minute tutorial if you want to watch that tonight. Otherwise, I can give you the link and you can just look at the tutorial.
Yeah, that's interesting, Derek. This is what I've also read, what the people do. It's exactly to get that core out properly. Well, that's about it, people. I've still got a learning curve to climb here, but hopefully I'll come there.
Thanks, Deon. Much appreciated. It's a great image, and thanks for the chat.
Fantastic. Deon, what are the chances of Deon that I can get a copy of your TIFF to try it in Affinity?
Yes, I can give these. You can get that. Otherwise, can I give you the JPEG, or won't that suit you?
Yeah. How big is the TIFF?
Well, I'll have to check that.
It'll be quite big.
Yeah, it's big. But I'll see what I can do, Derek, to get it to you.
Deon, when I bring the star diagonals to you to have a look at, I'll bring along a stiffy. I'd like to get a TIFF copy of this.
Yeah.
Can I
Okay.
also just ask Deon, the sequence of your processing? Do you decide on the fly what's the next step? In other words, based on the result of every step of the processing, or do you stick to a fairly rigid sequence?
It's both. Here, I stick to a rigid sequence when I start off, and then as I go along, you will see at a certain point that the image doesn't look right. Then I go back, and then I do some adjustments, which is not necessarily in my exact sequence at that stage, the workflow. That differs for each image. It depends on what you capture and so forth. But normally I stick 90% to my workflow. And obviously, sometimes I do things in between. which I had to do with this image.
Very impressive and most enjoyable.
Deon, is your TIFF 16-bit or 32-bit?
It's 16-bit.
Your Affinity works on 32-bit, and but I mean, obviously, you can still use a 16-bit.
Yeah, but you
And
can't you convert it in Affinity to 32?
Yeah, I don't know if there's much point in converting it back up. You know, when you do the stacking, then sometimes you stack in 32 and then you convert it back to 16 just for Photoshop. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe you had an original in 32.
No, the velocity does everything in 16. And that's what I get as a final TIFF image.
Yeah, I think you've got a very, very nice result anyway. But just looking at your tracking, did you say they're 20-second lights?
No,
Yeah, you said that.
it was 15.
Okay, there's a slight tracking, but I mean, your tracking's pretty good.
Yes, you can see it over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you look at the top right, that big star there, it seems like got a bit of a hollow in the middle. I don't know if that's a focus issue, not 100% perfect.
No, I think,
but I mean, the rest from the center, the stars look pretty good.
What you do find with the focal reducer, on the corners here, you will find that the stars will look a bit different than in the center. But that's just what you get with the focal reducer. It flattens the field in the corners, but obviously not enough in some instances. I still have to sort out, I'm not sure whether I get a better image if I vary my back focus a little bit, because you can, they've got a tolerance there which they say you can change. But these things I'll have to do experimental wise. I'll have to see how I can find an optimum for my setup.
Yeah, I think the adjustments are very, very small to make it maybe make a small difference. I think it looks like now that you talk about it, it could be a slight sort of a coma effect towards the outsides.
Yeah.
Which might be, you could maybe slightly improve that with a slightly better back focus. But I don't know how you actually work out how to improve the back focus.
Well, you've just got to adjust your gap. You know, we talk about millimeters, you know, either side of the optimum, which I say. So it's just a millimeter this way, a millimeter that way. So you either adjust your gap bigger or a bit smaller. And I have to experiment with that.
Deon, your focus, you say you use a button-off mask, and then you use full width half maximum in nebulosity to determine the best focus, or do you do it visually?
No, I use nebulosity, and nebulosity has got two functions. The first one is frame and focus, where you do your first focusing as best you can, and then you go on to fine focus, where you then use what's similar to full width of width of your star, and then you do that's a fine focus you do. No, I haven't even tried that. I just went to the prime focus part, the first focus, frame and focus. Next time I'll move on to the second part. Second part is very difficult because you must have a very stable, if you've got a bit of wind, it moves, just that slight movement you've got upset the Schmidt-Cassegrain's mirror. And it's difficult then to focus. But to get a proper focus, you must be able to do that as well. And that I still have to overcome. I haven't tried that yet.
In any case, the focus that you did achieve implies that your polar alignment is good,
Yeah.
because there's very little signs of tracking.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's only this, you see a bit here. But otherwise, yeah.
Deon, this has got to be, I think, probably the best image that any of us have come up with so far. We've started doing anything. We've got to put one of these, the JPEG, or the final on the website and Facebook. Can you email me the final as a JPEG?
Yes, I'll email you.
Or can you put it on yourself, or do you want me to put it on?
No, I'll email it to you, Derek. I think you're okay now with the procedure. It's been quite a while since I've put anything on there. So I'll have to learn that afresh, because I think you made changes to the software a while back.
Yeah, it's changed every now and then. So maybe what you can do is maybe we can actually put an article, a blog article on it. Maybe a little bit of just a brief story on your procedure that you followed, what you used, and how you did it, and so on. Just sort of bullet points, not a long story, just a half-page story about it.
Okay.
Then we put a bit of an article on, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's worth it.
Yeah. I'm not very happy with the image, but I'll send you the JPEG one, Derek.
Yeah.
Deon,
okay.
Can I also ask that further to Derek's request, could you just copy the JPEG image to send to all of us, but also to Jenny? And then when you've written the short story about the background to this image, then Jenny can include it in the next newsletter. I think
I think that must be done.
Something that our members really will be interested in and impressed.
Yeah, okay, now I will do that this time.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Deon.
Okay.
Well done.
All right, thanks. People, as I've said, it's still a learning curve for me. So hopefully next time it will be better than this one.
I think it's getting quite late now. What I'm going to do is email the link to that Affinity tutorial on this one, where they go through their procedures of how to handle this one, taken with the DSLR. Working on 10 seconds and how their things work. Their background extraction and all that is absolutely fantastic. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
It's just like a couple of clicks and you're done, and it's almost perfect.
They've got a free software for a certain period, have they, Derek? Yeah,
you can use it on free trial for 10 days, but you've really got to know a little bit about how to use it to maximize your use of that short time.
Yeah, that's
so. Maybe I'll send you the link to the main tutorial on the website, the main tutorial sort of menu with all the links to all the tutorials. And maybe what you can do is look at some of the tutorials first on the web, and then download it after a few days once you've gone through it a bit.
Yeah.
Then use it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'll have a look at that.
All right. I'll send the links, email.
Okay.
Thanks, Derek. That's great. I just got a message from Benny to say he's sorry he left us. His internet is playing up, but I did promise him that you have recorded the Deon's presentation. I hope I'm right.
That's right. I'm recording everything. I'll upload it to YouTube, and once it's all done, I'll send you the links.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks, Derek. Deon.
Okay. Pleasure, everybody.
Okay.
Stop sharing here.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.